there is debate about how many sacraments there are. Some, our Roman Catholic brothers and sisters, I believe, say 7. Methodists say 2. Baptism and communion. But there is a third that is heavily debated, and that is the potluck dinner. As evidenced by our youth message today. Thank you. That just came to me as I was sitting up there. It's not in the notes. Yes. And so, the trip of a lifetime, I found myself in St. Petersburg, Russia. And if you haven't been to St. Petersburg, Russia, it is a beautiful city, which is unusual to say of Russian cities. It's unusual in that its architecture is very European. It's unusual in that it has all kinds of canals, and it's called the Venice of the North because of that. I could just talk forever about St. Petersburg, but instead I'll just talk forever. And it came time for dinner, and we went into this lovely restaurant somewhere in the downtown region. And we were the only people in there. And I can still remember the ornate, very ornate wallpaper, even some curtains in a certain way. It really had a feeling of ambiance. And it's like, I'm gonna like this place. Well, I obviously don't speak Russian. Добрый день, good day, spasiba, thank you. You've now heard, you've now heard all of my Russian. You're not going to get a good meal with any of that. So I left the translation to my son, and as he engaged with the owner, it became known to the owner and the proprietor that he has guests from the United States of America. And not just guests, this man's dad and his mom. And how do you think he chose to honor us? In 2 ways. One, he said, I have some English-speaking music, and I'm going to put that on for you. The second, he said, I will bake you bread. And as we waited for our bread, the first song to come on was Nights in White Satin by the Moody Blues. And I said, I was born for this minute. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience. If I said to you, what's good about Tomato Brothers? The bread, right? And if I said, what about Olive Garden?
Breadsticks.
It's the breadsticks. There's just something about bread that even if you were, those of us that shouldn't be eating any more of it, we love bread. There's just something about bread. And in John chapter 6, that is where we have a few stories and a few teachings that will talk to us about bread. And we've just seen the feeding of the 5,000, and we're building up, and I believe it is next week's reading, where Jesus delivers the powerful words that I am the bread of life. And how wonderful and how powerful that those words are. But as we look at this particular reading, we find that there is a very large multitude, and of course, they become very hungry. And Jesus, like a good host, have you ever been to somebody's house and been convinced that you could be a skeleton on their couch before they'd ever think of offering you, anything at all. Jesus is a good host, and he's like, we need to take care of these people. And immediately they begin to pool their immediate resources. I don't believe that they scanned the 5,000 people. It's just kind of, they see the folks and they're like, what have we got? And they come up with, some loaves and some fishes that a young boy had. Anybody remember the Archway books? As a kid, they were Christian books, wonderful books, and there was a great little book on this called The Boy Who Shared His Lunch. And that's exactly what we have, is that this young child gives of what he has, and Jesus takes that. And here, theologians begin to debate a bit. I was always raised that Jesus just took that, and from that, fed 5,000 people. And I think that is a good teaching, and something that we can take hope and place our faith in, that God can take a little and do a lot with it. As a matter of fact, creation teaches us God can, even when there's nothing, can bring things into existence. And so the first thing that I really learned with that is that God can take a little and do a lot with it. But as other theologians have looked at it, they've said it is not likely that out of 5,000 people that only one kid packed a lunch. There had to be another responsible Jewish mother somewhere in the crowd, and that other people had food too. And that it was through the act of his giving of this example that other people said, well, I can give to the cause too. I don't think that we have to go either or in the interpretation. I think there is room to be faithful to the work of God, saying that probably a little bit of both happened. That Jesus did multiply, and that Jesus did take that and multiply and feed people. But I think that it's probably also very good and very faithful to the scriptures to say that Jesus, through the example of that young person, that other people gave. Let's use an example. Let's suppose that we know that we are all in the Heil Center and we're having a nice time, but we know that by the conclusion of the day, the chairs need to be put away and the tables need to be folded in order to make room for the next group. And as we're all sitting there enjoying the delicious treats, and by the way, you are invited to go after the service and enjoy the delicious treats. Let's suppose that Richard gets up and just quietly starts putting some chairs away. I dare say that pretty soon some of you and I would be going, well, I can help with that. And we would start folding some chairs and maybe putting away tables. So I don't think that we are being unfaithful or denying the work of God when we say that it is likely that maybe some other people gave in addition. It's no less of a miracle because to our own, we tend to, if we're not careful, we'll hold on to things and we'll hold on to them very dearly. I won't embarrass my child, but I remember one of my children writing something on the hand, and it had a heart, and I thought, oh no, here I go with the crushes and all of this, and welcome to this phase of fatherhood. And I read it, and it said, I love me. I'm like, uh-oh, that's a different problem. And as I thought about this particular sermon, I tried to think of things that give and things that keep. And even the most casual observer should be able to tell that when you look at an apple tree and its fruit, and you look at an orange tree and its fruit, and Tina said I better include my vegetables. So you look, at a tomato plant or a zucchini. I want to chase a trail. I'll just do it. Zucchini, really? There's 1,000 recipes for the thing? That means nobody has ever found a good use for it yet, and they keep looking. Okay. So now, whatever it is, whatever it's bearing, whether it be fruit or vegetable, it is bearing that for the benefit of everything around it and not for itself. I mean, have you ever seen an apple tree eating apples? Have you ever heard of an apple tree going, don't you dare take an apple? Well, you might hear the owner, yeah. But it is in the very core of nature to give for the blessing and the benefit of others. And when I think of things that refuse to give and exist only for their own benefit, I could only think of 2 examples with that. The first is the black hole that is in space, that has a star that has so collapsed upon itself and is so dense that not even light can escape from it. And if light even comes near, it actually bends light, if you can imagine that. It is all consuming, and it is nature's ultimate vacuum cleaner, because everything goes into it and nothing ever comes out. A second is something that occurs in us, and it's when a group of cells decide that we're only going to be about ourselves and not about anything else, and that's called cancer. And I would suggest to you that a black hole or the cancer, that those are very poor examples for which you should guide the basis of your life on. For it is when we give of ourselves to Jesus, it is when we give of our strengths and our weaknesses that we find that somehow, in the hands of Jesus, they're multiplied, they're blessed, and they're used in ways that you cannot possibly fathom or imagine. But the choice is up to you. Are you willing to give and to be vulnerable? I don't know. I mean, I'm now hiding somewhat behind the pulpit, but the thought of going without a meal was always kind of a terrifying thought to me, especially as a child. And think about this young child that basically this is all this child has, and it's like, and he gives it. He gives it. And out of that act, 5,000 people are fed. But I'm sure that had to be awful scary for that young child to give that up. Brothers and sisters, beloved of God, Is our faith as strong as that child, where we can overcome our fears and give of ourselves to Jesus? Our text also involves a time of when Jesus told the disciples to go on ahead, and then he, in essence, catches up to them by walking on the water. I suppose theologians have many different interpretations of that. I like to keep it wonderfully simple, and it's this. As you're doing what God would have you do, just know that nothing will keep Jesus away. In the physical sense, he had a lake and he didn't have a boat, and yet he was present and joined those disciples. Did Jesus not say that I will never leave you, I will never forsake you, I'll be with you until the end of time? We can take great hope in the fact that as we give, that God will use these small gifts and our weaknesses. For remember, for when I am weak, then I am strong. It's when we are willing to give of ourselves to God that we can know that great things may happen from that, and probably will happen. Some of them we may know of in this life, others will be a great surprise. Teachers, we have many teachers in our congregation. How many times have you had, years later, the student come back and say thank you, and it was from someone that you never expected it to hear from? You had no idea of the impact that you made. May we be faithful in our giving, in our serving. May we be faithful in our trust. May we take rest in knowing that Jesus will not let anything separate us from his presence or his love. But the choice is up to you. Will you continue to hold on tightly, whether it be out of greed, selfishness, or fear? Or will you be willing, like the young child, like those in the audience, be willing to give what you have to Jesus? It's up to you. And I hope that you and I choose to give our all for the good and the glory of our God and his people.